The following video was recorded during the WAG and SAG AFTRA strike. I fully support the strike, and the following video is intended as criticism and commentary, not promotion. Any praise given is directed at the writers, actors, and other creatives with whom they collaborated, not the studios. Hi friends, it's Sarah, the Fat Culture Critic. I know it's been a minute. I've been working on a longer video essay and also just, life stuff. But I wanted to make a video as a follow-up to a previous video of mine. Because after the first season of Heartstopper, I made an essay critiquing the fat representation, which I felt had tried but not succeeded, and that the show had accidentally walked themselves into the trope of the desexualized funny fat friend. And I said that I hoped that it would improve in the second season. And with the second season out now, I wanted to come back and revisit those thoughts because I am very happy to say that they addressed most of my concerns very well. I don't know if they heard the critique wider or just this is something they needed a bit more time to get their head around, but the show has definitely improved on this aspect. So to revisit my original critique, I felt that they'd included the character of Isaac, who was made for the show. He hadn't been in the comic. And he was not given as much space in the narrative as the other secondary protagonists, the rest of the friend group. And that his experience of romance, which this show is more concerned with romance really than sexuality, had been just left out. It hadn't been a part of the narrative at all. And that is a common cliche with fat characters where they are just the supportive friend. They live for everyone else, but they don't have their own romantic or sexual desires or experiences at all, unless it's a joke. And as I talked about then, when I called him desexualized as opposed to asexual, it's because it didn't feel like this was coming from the character's own agency. It was just absent. And with a character, it's important that asexuality or romantic orientation be present, be a part of the character's story. So if the character is asexual or aromantic, then that needs to be present in the narrative. Otherwise, feels like that is an external thing that is imposed, like that aspect is simply removed as opposed to the presence of asexuality. The absence of sexuality as opposed to the presence of asexuality. What we have this season is he is given space to develop that aspect of his character, and what is made present is his asexuality. And I'm not an asexual person, so my analysis of this is going to be limited, but the way that they have made it present is very slowly built into the narrative. We see him responding to other people, having romantic relations and physical relations, and clearly feeling left out. So there's a sense of presence of difference. So his experience is being presented as opposed to just not showing him or just not talking about him at all. We see his experience also. We see that someone is interested in him. And so we see his response to being the object of interest and, wondering if how he should respond, how he should feel. He asks the characters that, and then explores that and finds that it is not something he wants. So there you see there is a presence of difference to the other character's experience, but we are exploring his sexuality, and also key, the narrative does make it explicit that a fat character can be of interest because there's a character interested in him, which is better than the assumption that fat characters would be of no interest and have no interest. I still think it would be ideal if the representation of asexuality and the representation of fatness was not in the same character, but that is somewhat remedied by the presence of Sahar as a second fat character who declares herself to be bisexual, although it's not yet explored, but it is textually acknowledged. And then as the narrative continues, we see his asexuality become more present as his experience of discovering it is represented. As I said, I can't. My judgment of this is limited as a person who is not asexual, but I thought that it was rather lovely done to have him meet someone else who is of that experience and to hear it described, and then to, in a very Isaac kind of way, to find a book. Very beautifully handled. Clearly, this representation of asexuality, it has the sense of having come from authenticity and from a place of love. Again, I said it would be preferable if the asexuality exploration had come from a character who wasn't also fat, because it is unfortunate that the trope of often aligning these two and the tendency to assume that fat people have no interest and are of no interest. But again, that is broken up a bit by having a second fat character, and it is also by having presented that it is natural for someone to find Isaac interesting. It's just that he is not reciprocating that interest, and so yeah, it's really great to see a story address the things that you critique about it. It doesn't change that I feel that his development was lacking in the first season, and that the first season does have that sense of a desexualized funny fat friend. But having had that as the first season, this is really the ideal conclusion to that. So I wanted to, having made the criticism, I feel I want to come back and give the praise, because I think that is well done. And also, I noticed that they made more of an effort to have diversity of size in the world. More larger extras, the presence of Sahar. Yeah, it's just all around an improvement on that. And also, it was nice to see other body diversity, to have the presence of a disabled character, a disabled character who's non-binary, which extends the representation as well. So yeah, all around, I was really pleased. It was quite lovely second season, actually. But there was something that was a bit of a dark cloud. It was beautiful to see Nick taking control as much as possible over his own coming out story, his own experience of how much he shares and to who. And that is lovely to see. However, the dark cloud is that the actor who plays him in real life was not allowed that experience. He was bullied until he came out as bisexual. And he was bullied by people who consider themselves fans, which is a real disappointment. And it involved a discussion of queerbaiting. People suggested that by not talking about his sexuality, that he was queerbaiting. And I wanted to talk about that just a little bit, because I did talk about the necessity to make a character's sexuality present. That if it's not present, it's not representation. That is for characters, not actors. The difference between Kit, the actor, and Nick, the character, is that Nick does not exist when he isn't on screen and has no internal experience at all. He's fictional. So he doesn't get privacy. His experience doesn't exist if it isn't presented because he is fiction. We can imagine an inner life for him, and that's one of the great joys of fiction, is when a character becomes real to you and you imagine them as having an internal existence. But real people, actors who play characters, have an internal experience. They have a privacy, and they have a right to that. And it is a real shame that this young man didn't get control over his own coming out narrative. In real life, absence may come from the agency of the person. And that is not absence, that's privacy. That is different than a narrative. Isaac doesn't have privacy because he isn't real. And so if his asexuality wasn't made present in the narrative, then it didn't exist. That would just be desexualized. But an asexual person doesn't owe anyone else their internal private experience at all. Nor does a bisexual person, a gay person, a straight person, a trans person, anybody. We don't owe each other an explanation of our private experiences. The other thing that kept coming to mind watching the story of Nick being able to largely control his own coming out was all of these laws and rules that are trying to make teachers inform parents if a kid is trans, because this experience of being able to decide when you tell people your internal truth, it should be up to the person. That kids aren't like perpetual children. They are humans growing into adulthood. And part of that for queer kids is when you tell people about, your own understanding of yourself, and whether it's gay, asexual, bisexual, or trans. The experience for any person of telling the world who you know yourself to be is a very personal experience. And I find it truly disturbing that people want to legislate forcing teachers to inform on kids, because you don't have a right to that information. That is something that a person tells you when they feel that it's right for them to tell you. That person being your child doesn't make you entitled to that information. Because, one of the most important relationships we ever have is between ourselves and our parents. And, even in the best case scenario, that can be quite a difficult thing to tell your parents something this incredibly important piece of information about yourself. And, you know, it can, even in the best of circumstance, it can take time to figure out how you want to say it and, you know, just to be ready to speak the words. And it is wrong for anyone else to interfere in that. Yeah. So it's wrong. It was wrong for the fans to bully Kit Connor into coming out when he was not ready, and it's deeply disturbing to legislate to have teachers tell parents. Yeah, I wish we all got the kind something like the experience that the kids in this show have. It's a bit of wish fulfillment. They don't make the world perfect, but it is better than reality. And yeah, it's really enjoyable to live in that world for a little bit. And I'm glad that they did a better job of making space for fat people to exist in that world. Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised to see this much improvement in terms of how you represent a fat character and how you do fat representation, to have taken the time to include more fat characters and to make sure that he is not simply a desexualized funny fat friend, but an asexual person who in this season is fully a part of the group. And not only that, but does actually speak back to the group when they don't include him or when they only want to include him on their terms. So, yeah, that was really great. And I hope that actual fat kids, teenagers, have a better experience of things. So yeah, if you want more from me, you can subscribe. Like I said, there's a long essay in the works. It is coming. I apologize to my patrons that it's taking so long, but I'm working on it. And yeah, if you want to support me, you can join the Patreon or tip me at the various things that are in the doobly doo. So that's it from me.